Hey guys, today I'm going to give you 10 reasons why you might not want to get a hair transplant. The last thing that I want to do with my videos is convince you to get a hair transplant. I would suggest to most people that they don't get a hair transplant, but it could be a really good opportunity for you at the same time. So today we're going to give you a checklist of 10 reasons you should not get a hair transplant. The number one reason, and not necessarily the most important, but let's start here, why you should not get a hair transplant is if you are not willing to wear your hair longer in the back to cover scarring. Because it doesn't matter what kind of hair transplant you get, you are going to have some scarring.
Here's the bottom line. If you think you're going to not have a scar with a hair transplant, it's not going to happen. You're going to have scarring. You're going to have scarring of any type of hair transplant that you choose. So prepare yourself. If you think at some point in the future you're going to shave your head and not see any scarring, do not get a hair transplant.
The number two reason, if your donor hair is thin, fine, and weak, it's probably in your best interest to wait until it's stronger before you have a hair transplant.
The problem with the industry sometimes is pushing people into surgery. You know, it doesn't mean that someone with thin, fine, weak hair can't have a hair transplant, but it's probably better for that person to get on a preventative treatment and try to make that hair a little thicker, stronger, and fuller. It's in their best interest. I mean, it all comes down to the donor hair. If your donor hair is thin, fine, and weak, guess what? Your hair transplant is going to be thin, fine, and weak. David, as an example, had really strong, thick horsehair in the back of his head, thank God, and that's one of the building blocks to success. If it starts off thin, fine, and weak, it's going to end up thin, fine, and weak.
Number three, if you're in your 20s, you already have hair loss, and you have hair loss history in your family, and someone is recommending that you get FUE surgery, get a second opinion.
So one of the things that's pretty solid in determining if a patient is a good candidate for a hair restoration procedure is if they're in their 20s and they have a strong family history of hair loss, and we know where they're going. The two procedures or three procedures that we really look at to choose from. FUE is not the first choice. Why? It doesn't move a lot of hair, and it depletes a lot of donor in the back of the hair. So by just right off the get-go, a 22, 23-year-old male patient walks in and wants FUE, and his dad is a class 7 bald guy, we're in for a rough time. So we want to make sure we don't choose the wrong procedure. Choosing FUE with those type of characteristics and family history is a wrong decision.
Number four, you have dark hair on light skin and are told you will be able to achieve the results you want in one procedure. Get a second opinion.
Dark hair on light skin is not any harder to do from a scientific standpoint. I mean, all hair transplants, as long as you're in a dedicated only hair clinic, do all the procedures exactly the same. The hairs are put in a certain square centimeter, a certain amount of follicle, a certain amount of hairs in per square centimeter. It's all the same, but why does it always look like it's thinner in the hairline when the patient has dark hair on light skin? The answer to that question is aesthetics. It's just really hard to not see that skin through that dark hair. It kind of jumps out at you. So point being is that if you go to a clinic and they're showing you some great work, please understand, especially if you're younger or even in your 30s, that it's probably going to take two procedures to get to where you want to be with dark hair on light skin.
And dark hair on light skin might be a really good opportunity for someone to get skin micropigmentation as well, right, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, you know, now we're combining all these newer technologies in order to create better aesthetics, and I'll tell you, it's really remarkable. I mean, I'm a big fan of using anything that is out there to enhance your hair transplant. Micropigmentation is a great tool that can give that guy that has that dark hair on light skin the look he wants without maybe doing a second procedure. So it's pretty exciting.
Number five, you are told by an FUT only doctor that you need FUT. Or you're told by an FUE only doctor that you need FUE. Get a second opinion from a board certified surgeon that does both kinds of hair transplants. Obviously, if you go to someone that sells blueberries, what kind of fruit are they going to tell you that you should eat for breakfast the next morning? Blueberries. So it's really important that you get at least a second opinion from a surgeon that does both. And then if you end up choosing one of the surgeons that just specializes in FUE or just specializes in FUT, after a surgeon that does both has told you which one that they think you should get, you probably have a much better chance of getting the result that you want.
Yeah, I think that what's most important is you feel like you're getting really objective information. I just can't, for the life of me, figure out how someone that's only does FUE, that's all they do. They feel obviously that that's the best procedure out there for all patients. End of story. They're not doing any linear procedures, FUT. By the same token, doctors that do only linear procedures, FUT, are absolutely without question not set up and not believing in the FUE procedure. Now listen, I've been around a while and I've been fighting hair loss for 37 years and I've been watching this industry personally myself. And I think that the FUE procedure is a fantastic procedure that has its place. And I think that the FUT procedure, the gold standard in the industry, moves a lot of hair and is probably the top choice for most patients. But to go to one clinic that only does one type procedure is biased, in my opinion, and this is my opinion. I think that you need to seek the advice of someone who only does hair transplants and offers both procedures to get an objective opinion on the pros and cons of both procedures and then make your decision.
Number 6, if you are considering getting a hair transplant from a dermatologist, cosmetic surgeon, or doctor who has purchased a hair transplant machine to do your hair transplant, run fast. Do not get a hair transplant from them.
Yeah, David, the industry is morphing into what the machine companies and the marketing and advertisers want, which is the hair transplant industry should be a commodity. No different than going down to the corner store where they sell tires and putting tires on your car. Why should you fly to California to get new tires for your car? Bottom line is that there's not a lot of dedicated only hair doctors that are specialists. Buying a machine, even though you have a medical license and you're a plastic surgeon, does not make you a hair transplant doctor, period.
Getting a hair transplant done by a cosmetic surgeon and not a dedicated hair transplant specialist is kind of like getting your self-portrait drawn by someone who paints houses. Just because someone is a painter doesn't mean that they're going to draw an excellent picture of you. And obviously, this is permanent surgery, not a self-portrait. Number 7. If you are a bona fide FUE candidate, make sure that the surgeon doing your FUE hair transplant is the one who is actually extracting each one of the grafts. That is, it is the surgeon doing the surgery. Steve brought something to my attention that I had no clue about, and that is that in many of these FUE surgeries, it's actually just the technicians that extract the hair. And extracting this hair is much more difficult than you might think that it is. It really requires a surgeon that is a specialist to extract those hairs because it is very difficult to do well.
So I've been in the hair transplant industry in and out or as a patient for 37 years. And I've done a lot of research. I mean, I learned the hard way. The FUE doctors, for the most part, that are specialists, that only do hair transplants, a lot of them don't do the extraction of the tissue. Now let me elaborate on that. The surgical part of a hair transplant procedure is required by law to be done by a doctor. More importantly than that, in my opinion, is if a doctor is selling me a hair transplant procedure, that it's his hands, the custom work being done by him, I want to make sure that he's actually doing the procedure. The extraction of the tissue in the back of the head, where we take the hair from, whether it's in a linear fashion or a follicular unit extraction, one at a time, has to be done by the doctor. If you do your research, and if you listen to what I'm telling you to do, make sure you ask the question when you're sitting in a consultation with a FUE doctor, Dr. such and such, are you the one that is extracting every one of the grafts in the back of my head? You will be shocked on how many don't do it.
Number 8, if you don't have a plan, then don't get a hair transplant.
I like to pull out my crystal ball, and I like to unveil the crystal ball with each and every patient and say, guess what? I'm no genie, but here's what I know. One day you're going to die, that's guaranteed. One day you're going to pay taxes, if you're old enough, that's guaranteed. And guess what? If you've got hair loss, it's going to continue to fall. Hair loss is progressive. The second part of that is a hair transplant does not stop or slow hair loss. So we need to put together a package plan. We need to figure out and take into, obviously, the reason why you fill out the forms when you go into these doctors' offices. How old are you? What's your family history? Are you taking any preventative treatments? We need to analyze your hair. Is it thick? Is it strong? Is it weak? Is it wimpy? And what are we looking to achieve? What are your expectations? We need to package all these things together and come up with a plan.
too many times patients think, because they're led to believe, or they just research it on the internet on their own, that a hair transplant is going to solve all their problems. And that's just not the case. So what I like to do, and I enjoy this, believe it or not, with many people around the world, is put together a plan. And I'm talking to these guys every week, every month, every 2 months, every 6 months. I mean, I'm sending patients to doctors around the world. And I want to know, how did the procedure go? I want to know if that doctor's doing what I think he should be doing. I want to see your after photos. I want to see your 2 months, your 6 months, your 1 year. And if you have questions about preventative treatments, these are the kind of plans that people that invest a lot of money in hair transplants need to have.
Number 9, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And before I let Steve get into all of these other points, just a few minutes ago, you were sent an email. I saw it.
Hair salon in California?
Yeah, a hair salon in California was using these before and after pictures for their laser treatment that they were offering. They were using before and after treatments from Dr. McGrath, the surgeon that Steve worked with, from his hair transplant surgery that he had done. So it was his hair transplant surgery on one of his patients before and after, and they were using it as their before and after of their laser treatment. I mean, obviously this is criminal what they're putting up these pictures. A lot of people get away with this stuff because they'll say, oh, our web designer found those pictures and put them up, we didn't give them permission, and these companies actually get away with this criminal advertising. So again, obviously that was too good to be true, looking, oh, if you come have this laser thing, then you're going to have a full head of hair. I mean, it was just nuts. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, I guess if you're going to scam, you're going to scam big, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we moved 10,000 hairs on that guy. And this guy in California, this hair salon is claiming that it's all grown back from laser therapy. To the point is that we're kind of recapping and talking about hair transplantation and being 50% science, 50% art. Let's start with the artistry. The artistry all comes down to you seeing that doctor, talking to your doctor, and having multiple videos and photos of before and after of patients that are similar to yourself. You want to see a worst case scenario, not the best case scenario. Well, you want to see some nice cases as well, but they've got to have your hair type. The artistry side is all about how many years the doctor's been doing it, does he do this full time, and what are his techniques and what does he recommend that you do, and the pros and cons of each. The science side, these things are not cheap. You've got to have a full-time dedicated staff. Why? All these girls do, and all girls and guys do, as technicians, is dissect that tissue under those microscopes and place that tissue into each of those little sites that doctor makes using his artistry, which is angle and direction. The science part of it is the extraction of the tissue. How deep does the doctor go? Does he get all the sebaceous gland? That's what's needed if the grafts are going to grow. So there's a lot of these things that, of course, you probably don't have the time in your life to research. That's my job to do for you. But the point being is, if the clinic, the doctor, don't pass my set of standards, then I would avoid them. It's all about artistry and science and dedication to what you do.
And number 10, and I think this is really important, having been a hair transplant patient and spent thousands and thousands of dollars on hair transplants, is that scar. Does the doctor guarantee their work? And are they willing to fix that scar if they leave you with one that is bigger than you're comfortable with?
In the last slide, we talked about science and artistry. And in my opinion, if I'm going to pay big money for something in today's world, I want a guarantee of some sort. And working with a lot of the top doctors in the world, the better ones, if not the top of the line, will always guarantee the work. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to have the head of hair you had when you were 12 years old? Absolutely not. Does that mean that you're going to have no scarring? Absolutely not. But you need to sit down and have a consultation with your doctor, look him dead in the eyes, and ask him how he guarantees his work. Now, the doctor that I work with and who guarantees his work, Dr. McGrath, will guarantee that you can cut your hair to a 3-guard. And if you can't cover the scar, he will use various different methods to fill in that scar so that you can at least go to a 3-guard. It rarely happens, if ever. But that's a guarantee. That's a nice feeling. Most Caucasians and Spanish, Middle Eastern can go to a 2-guard, but he guarantees a 3. Based on the presentation, your doctor should guarantee his work. So if he tells you that you're going to need 2 procedures to go from front to back because you're a class 6 bald guy, and he comes up with a huge gap in the back of your head that he can't fill after 2 procedures, then he's got to take care of that. So it's not that we want a bunch of complaining patients because they don't look like they did when they were 12 years old. We all know that's not going to happen.
What we want is we want good quality work where the doctor has skin in the game. If the doctor puts his reputation on the line and guarantees his work, you're going to be very happy.